And we're live, guys. I apologize. I was 25 minutes late. I got stuck in traffic. Things are a little hectic. Uh-oh. Boomer tech issue there. I need to mute that. Anyways, welcome to the SoNo Show, episode 32, Bulgarian perspective. And today I have a special guest. This is his second time on the SoNo Show, but this will be I think you called in that one time last year and we ended up talking for a while. How are you doing today, Nordlux? It's good to have you on.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine, brother. Well, I'm fine. As I said, after dinner with my girlfriend, feeling quite well.
Oh
The
yeah.
weather, the weather outside is almost quite hot. Actually, it's it is in Celsius. It's almost 18 degrees Celsius,
Hmm.
and quite nice. Yeah, quite
Oh.
nice. Doesn't feel like winter at all. And yeah, I'm ready to share. But as I told you, in the last year or so, I'm quite busy with my small business and with the family matters and repairing
Yeah.
apartments and expanding. Because as we know from our Semitic, let's say, friends from the Middle East, the chaos is the best time for expansion. So I was doing some good investment, and yeah, this is what I'm doing. That's why I'm not very regular with the podcast anymore. But
Oh, I was about to say I
maybe,
understand. Absolutely. You gotta live, you know. Can't be
yeah,
online all the time.
yeah. Working on establishment, as I said, maybe eventually is expanding the family, if you know what I
Oh
mean.
yeah.
This is what we're doing here. Otherwise, the only interesting things that I can think of, basically, in my, you're part of the Telegram chat of my small group. I mean, is some question about Palatia, the situation of the Balkans in Bulgaria, the war in Ukraine. I had
Yes.
some small experience that I could share, and that's it. The other interesting thing is that two comrades visited me at the end of the last year from
Oh
Denmark
really?
and yep, from Denmark and Croatia. Great guys,
Oh yeah. That's
and
awesome.
we 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 visited actually it was quite short. We were planning to longer travel. You know that I'm my business is with tourists mostly.
Yes.
Basically, I was planning a lot of historical places because here we have a lot of history. I must tell you that a lot of
Oh yeah.
history, like long history. You can go to some of the bigger local museums and we can see basically artifacts from I don't know 7, 10,000 years ago, even older. Like one of the older swastikas in the world were found here.
Oh
The,
really?
the the oldest Cro-Magnon remains, yeah. And yeah, there are many things. The oldest gold in Varna. Actually,
Oh yeah.
I had short video clips that I managed to do in the museum, even though it was not allowed. But from a Cimmerian stelas, from Thracian artifacts, from Scytho-Sarmatian artifacts, from these Aryan folks. Quite interesting art, and you can comprehend basically the art that they had, let's say, 3,500 years ago, even 4,000 years ago, with the early Christian art, let's call it art. And
Yeah.
it's like I don't know, it's like a degradation. It was obviously some kind of drop of quality.
Yeah. It was a
So
decline, you could say. A
yeah, yeah,
noticeable
yeah.
decline.
Yeah, but then later the Christian art improved, obviously, because more and more. richer people with finer taste, I suppose, join the religion. So it's not fair to say it's like, oh shit, obviously. But generally speaking, the traditional art that we had here, like these, even these, even this, you can Google these, the first golden treasure in the Varna necropolis. You can see how, I mean, the people that did this thing, they were quite, I'll dare to say, civilized, quite intelligent people. And traditionally speaking, they were not, how to say, traditionally they till now, they believe that they're not Indo-Europeans. But it looks like they took some samples from the elite. They found some maybe Indo-European admixture in the elite class.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because this is quite ancient civilization. Like these people literally lived in two-stair houses. Like this is like thousands and thousands years before Egypt and before the Sumerians.
Oh yeah.
Like yeah, like at least 1,000 years before the Sumerians. So they were quite developed.
What
Yeah.
was this civilization called? I've read about a civilization that was supposed to have been in Ukraine, that was supposed to predate the Sumerians and I believe the Egyptians as well. Was it called the Arata? Is that how you pronounce it?
Oh, the Arata, they were more like in the south of Russia and Caucasus region, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay, okay.
The Indo-Europeans usually they, well, it's a new theory because some people denied that basically Yamnaya, usually until recently they believe that Yamnaya, the first Indo-European speaking culture, is what is now Ukraine.
Yeah,
But then they said that basically Yamnaya, because there's a different lines of thought, the Yamnaya related to the first Indo-Europeans, but not to exactly the first Indo-Europeans. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a very ancient past, and it's very nice to see these kind of lines of people. And you see, it's very interesting because there is these. You must understand that these people that created this golden treasure, and you can Google it, the oldest golden treasure in the earth or something like that.
yeah.
There was quite,
I think
and
we
there was
actually talked. I was going to say, I think we might have actually touched on this the last time we did a stream last year. I think you may have brought this up slightly, if I
yep.
remember correctly.
Supposedly, the male line of these people is totally gone. Like there is no male descendants from these people. But I've looked at the facial reconstruction of the guy that was found, and because we were together, like the guy from Denmark and the Croatian brother, and I look at the guy, and I say, well, but what of the features that this guy have is he's perfectly European. You can see it in his face. And what are the features that this guy, like a straight nose and like a quite intelligent face and this and that?
Yeah, he's dolichocephalic,
Yeah,
long-headed.
it's very it's closer to me and to the Croatian guy, but you can see it in the Danish too. So it's a very, I don't know. It's like this. I'm sorry. This relation to the time and to these Asian people and basically these people, or at least the people that are very close to them, are all over Europe. I mean, of course, on the Balkans, there we have a high percentage of them through female line, but I believe
Yeah,
there are something like 30 or 40% in Germany and 30 something percent of them in Denmark. So yeah, there are some of these people left in Europe, and they're part of the heritage. The least of their genes are in Finland. From what I've known, something only like 10% or 14%, something like that. And coincidentally, the Finns are the least related genetically to Bulgarians. Like this is the what I found to the story. So
Interesting.
yeah, because they had these, they have these least amount of Middle Eastern farmers, and the only strain of relation is basically the Indo-European wine.
Yeah.
So they had very small amount, and these Indo-Europeans that were here were not exactly the Indo-Europeans that were in Finland.
Yeah, the
And
region of
plus,
Finland.
and
Yeah.
plus the Finns had a quite relatively high amount of far what's Asian admixture, but let's say high amount. It's like, I don't know, what is it, 5%, 6%, something like that. It's not like high. It's just
Yeah.
higher than the average in Europe. For comparison, I believe in Bulgaria it's like 2%. In east of Germany it's like 1.5%, something like that. It's, and plus I believe they are not tracking, talking about genetics. This is also like a trick of the modern science, because we went to a totally different direction. But anyway, we are talking about different things. But the trick of modern science is that they said this is Asian something admixture in the European population, but actually a lot of these genetic traces are coming from these uh, survived the J called them ancient, the real Hyperboreans. So these Eurasian forefathers, basically the legendary
Yeah.
Hyperboreans. And these genes were spread in Europe. We have quite a lot of them, or at least more than in Asia. But in Asia, they also have some of them. In China, in Japan, and things like that. So these genes, these supposedly Asiatic admixture, could come from them. Also, this is a thing. So
I
so.
gotta. I was going to ask you just a question real quick. You mentioned these sort of Eurasian genes, what he
Mhm,
hypothesized as the Hyperboreans, you could say. Do
mhm.
you think there are any links between possibly them and what was the Tokharians and perhaps the Ainu that were around in Japan, or am I off here?
For the, I know there are many different theories that I've heard. But one of the theories that these ancient, so the Tuharians are Indo-Europeans. They're
Yes.
Indo-European speakers, but they're not Aryans, even though their name Toch Aryan is very similar to Aryan.
Yeah.
But basically, they were ancient branch, from what I've known, the ancient branch of the Indo-Europeans that moved to the east before the Aryans. Aryans, or Iranic speakers, moved a little bit later. So basically, and this is very, Iranic speakers were, how to say, very large group of people, and some of these people, and I'm continuing to talk with different, with Croatians, with Poles, with East Germans, with Austrians, with things like that. And a lot of these people, when you compare the legends and things like that, there are some kind of traces that you can see some kind of Iranic origin in many of the myths of the people, including of people that are now supposedly Slavic, like whatever, Bulgarians, like Croatians, like Serbs, like or some kind of Roman speakers, like Romanians, like
Yes.
Ukrainians, obviously, because Ukraine was basically one of the home places of the Indo-Iranian speakers. Like they were called Skythia or Sarmatia Magna. Meanwhile, Skythia Minor was in northern Bulgaria.
Okay.
Uh, so
Interesting.
so
Interesting.
basically all these people that came from the steppes had in the early antique period were called Scythians. And until recently, a lot of these I turned these things into historical, anyway, these a lot of these people that came in the medieval period were called Scythians by the Byzantines, so basically by the Romans, because
Yeah.
Byzantines basically not
Eastern
accurate.
Romans.
Yeah, they were called, the Byzantine called themselves Tot Romanoi in Greek, but basically they called themselves the Romans. So
Okay.
basically, Byzantine is an 18th century term. It's not accurate. They
Oh,
never called
really?
it. Yep.
See,
Yep.
I didn't know that. That's like I said, man. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here, is because here in America, we're not really taught much about the history of Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, it seems like our history classes, especially as children, is dominated by the education from, like, Western Europe, you could say, the colonial era, when Eastern Europe has a beautiful and immense history in itself. It's quite interesting.
It's complicated. It's
Yes.
complicated, but the history is very complicated, and a lot of people, including your professional historians, are not very good in history.
Oh
This
yeah,
is
I'm sure.
especially in Eastern Europe, and the problem of is part partly or partially the problem is in Eastern European historians too, because uh, one of the reasons that the history is so convoluted is the intervention in history by powers that want to shape the history in their favor. I
Yes.
will, I
Yes.
will name, for example, the Byzantines. They like to kind of falsify the history, but also the Russians. The Russians are also a big in twisting history in one or another direction.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, this is one of the reasons. And Western European historians are just copying what
They're
some
doing.
Russian or some other historian is writing, and that's it.
Yeah.
For example, one of the things that we were uh, commenting recently is that there was genetic what is called sequestering, or anyway, the genetic code of the old Bulgarians because of these in I believe in Science magazine, and they found out the thing that we know from all the myths that I know with all these legends, that they were obviously like an ethnicity they formed into what is now Ukraine. Great old Bulgaria in 7th century was in what is now Ukraine, basically around the places that are the battlefronts today. And basically they found out that they were Europeans. Not big surprise there, because I know how they were described. But for many years, because of communism, because of outer influences, there was this theory that they are Turkic tribe, and they're trying to describe them like Mongoloids and things like that. Even though the Germans, the Arabs, and the Romans themselves said that the Bulgarians were quite tall guys with very often with quite fair skin, and they were good in battle. This
Yeah.
is what this is what we know, and this is what what we know from genes proving the myths, right? And
Yeah.
the interesting, I'd say, the what was left from these theories that certain powers are still intervening in the history of Bulgaria, obviously of Ukraine, and they're trying to push their narrative. And they're making this because of imperial purposes. The same
Yes.
thing like certain people are trying to present like the Vikings like some kind of diverse group of people that were transgender loving and some kind
Oh
of
yes. Yes. Trying to push the political agenda.
yeah, basically did the same shit is going on here. For example, a certain people trying to present old Bulgaria like a very inclusive group, like a very liberal group that never had slaves. They also were fighting only because were attacked by the empire. Not true. Like
Yeah.
every other like every other European group, they were imperialists. They were conquering other people, fighting, sometimes more successful than the others. But generally speaking, this was the big battle. By the way, I had these arguments with my friends from Denmark, because they had this perspective that the battle for Christianity was fought in Northern Europe, but actually the battle for Christianity was fought on the Balkans.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that many people don't know, that actually first Bulgarian Empire was the country that created the Cyrillic, or the Cyrillic, if you insist, of the wrong pronunciation alphabet.
Is it Cyrillic? Is that how you spell it? I mean, to
It's
pronounce it?
with hard K. It coming from Kirillitsa, and this is the correct pronunciation,
Oh, okay.
Kirillitsa. And
I've always been pronouncing it incorrectly then.
no, you're pronouncing it correctly, because the people that spelling it with C thinks that it's the guy that created it. It's Cyril, but it's not Cyril. It's Kirill with K. But
Oh, okay.
anyway, so basically, and it is creating the first Bulgarian Empire, and it was created for the purpose of empire building. And the empire building was the first Bulgarian Empire. They wanted to create this imperial model, because for the time being, the Bulgarian Empire was quite powerful, I would say. It was including the territory of the most of the Balkans, plus what is now Romania, and we were bordering Western Frankish Empire, which is basically predecessors of what is now Germany in Hungary. So basically the border was around the capital of Hungary, about Budapest.
Okay.
And one of the few countries, if there are some Croats in the audience, hell to our brothers there, one of the few countries that resisted the Bulgarian army was the Croats, on the Balkans at least.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there was quite powerful empire, one of the few quite well organized states in Europe, and culture was quite influential. So the battle for the Christianity was there in the end of 8th century, the beginning of 9th century. There was these clashes. The old Bulgarians before the Christianization were there were purges against the Christians, but then the elite decided to, let's say, adopt Christianity for the purposes of nation building or empire building. And they used the alphabet, the language, as a way to unite the people and create this imperial model that is very similar to the Eastern Roman model.
Yeah.
Now, how good was that, or how bad was that? I will leave it alone. But the books that were written in the first Bulgarian Empire actually influenced later the Kievan Rus, and from Kievan Rus influenced quite seriously, let's say, what is now Russia, and that's why the Cyrillic, or the Cyrillic, was one of the more popular alphabets in the world right now. So this is the cultural influence of the first Bulgarian Empire that is felt to this day. But there was, of course, forces that were not very happy with Christianization, Romanization of the old Bulgarian Empire. There was some pagan backlashes, even quite late after the Christianization. Like there was a prince called Buyan the Mage, or Buyan Maga, that is quite famous in Bulgarian folklore. He's like a Arthurian figure, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because according to some legends in, let's say, what is now southwestern part of Bulgaria, he's sleeping under the mountain with his warriors, and he will return eventually if Bulgaria is attacked or under threat of total annihilation, which is quite good time to return, by the way, because we are under the threat of total annihilation. But he's quite interesting figure, because basically what happened was that after the Christianization, that happened, let's say 2 generations before the time of Buyan the Mage or Maga. It is interesting that the old Bulgarian used this Iranian or Iranic word Maga or Mage, which is, if you don't know, magician is coming from these Persian
Like the
words.
like the word magi, perhaps, because I think
Yep,
magi is what they call the.
Magi, yeah, but
Yeah.
in Bulgaria it's Maga.
Okay.
So basically means like a MAGA hat, but it's not exactly MAGA hat. But anyway, so basically these magi or magicians or whatever these means mighty or knowledgeable in Old Persian, and
Interesting.
They were related with these Persian Aryan because basically they were the Aryan priesthood religions. I say religions because there are at least 2 religions that came from Persia and one, unfortunately, that came from Persia and that was not wanted in Europe, and especially on the Balkans. The first 2 religions are basically Zoroastrianism and Mithraism. Mithraism was
Yes.
at some point was quite spread at the Roman variant of Mithraism. I mean, the
Yes.
Roman variant
Yeah,
of
the Mithra
Mithraism.
cults.
Yeah, it's a very Aryan cult. It's very similar to the cult of the Thracian heroes or the Thracian horseman, which is another topic that I like to talk about quite often because the
Oh yeah.
Thracian horseman is actually the modern word for hero in English is coming from Latin, but the Latins took this word from the Thracians. So heros means like a seat of the gods. Basically, this
Okay.
is this. Heroes is the seat of the gods. And this root of the word you can find in Heracles. You can
Yeah.
find it in Hera, like
Yeah, the goddess.
the
Yes.
goddess Hera. And basically, I believe Heracles means like a seat of the god, which because he was the offspring of Zeus. So basically, heroes. This is this ancient belief that the heroes, the kings, and the aristocracy, they're descendants of the gods directly, which is very Indo-European thing also. And also another interesting thing is that because we are using the term Aryan, but it's not exactly true because Western Europeans they used in the Proto language in this reconstruction they used the term Herios or Arios. Meanwhile, the eastern branch of the Indo-European family used the term Araya, which is the the origin of the term Aryan, which
Yeah.
means noble. Arios or Herios, I'm not pronouncing it correctly because it's a very. This means
Difficult
like,
word.
yeah, this means something like kinsman, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh, but in the eastern branch of the Indo-European languages, these became like a noble because there were these people that were strikingly like different from the conquered population, I believe. And also they were related with in these mythos with they were quite taller than the conquered population of the Far East, and they also had the horses. The horses are very very important.
Yes.
Also, the Chinese calling these their horses the heavenly horses, and they're mentioning the horses of the Scythians, but also the horses of the another interesting group of people called Greco-Bactrians, which
Yeah.
is whole
Isn't
another
that?
topic.
Yeah, that's the people that settled in. That's the Greeks that settled in
Yep,
what is now
yep,
Afghanistan, right? Yeah.
yep. They brought these type of very, very good horses that actually these horses had this link to old Yamnaya. And
Oh, interesting.
yep, they found, the Bulgarian scientists found that the horses of the Western Europeans, they were kind of race mixed horse, so to say. They were mixed with some local breeds that make them a little bit smaller and not so efficient. Meanwhile, the Thracian horses, which by the way, in the Iliad, they also mentioned the godlike Thracians, and their horses. Like
Yeah.
there was even a rumor that the Thracian kings feeding the horses with human meat and blood or something like that for some
Really
reason. Yeah,
interesting.
most
Interesting.
likely, most likely is because of this ancient Indo-European practice of human and horse sacrifice. This is
Oh, okay.
something like that. So basically, the Thracians were just these horse racial purists. Let's put it that way. The horses of the Thracians were like almost 100% pure.
They were like a
Uh,
super breed, you could
they
say.
were
They were,
like a super pure breed of the Yamnaya horses. They were
yeah,
like these purists that were keeping these horses clean. And interestingly enough, a branch of these horses you can find in what is now so-called Arabic steeds,
yes,
because
interesting.
because because most likely the Cimmerians or the Scythians or some of other Indo-European tribes brought these horses, and they started to mix in these local breeds, and they created these big horses, like
Yeah,
these really big horses. Because you must understand that in antiquity they always talk about how the back in the time the people were shorter. Is it
yeah,
true or not true? Let's say it's true, but on average, because for example, a friend of mine that is living in the Netherlands or in Holland, he said that in 17th century, whatever, he said that the average size of the Dutch was something like 162, which is 5 feet 4, something like that. It's very short.
yeah.
Right now, the Dutch are one of the tallest people in the world. Maybe with the Bosniaks, with the Bosniaks, they're one of the tallest in the world, like 180 something, or 83 or 84 or something like that, which is plus minus my height.
Yeah,
So basically, their averages up with 20 centimeters for what's, let's say, 3 centuries. So there is something in that, maybe type of food or something. I don't know.
yeah.
But
That's
uh,
interesting. I
but
was gonna ask you a couple of questions just to circle back, if that's all right, real quick. Um, you mentioned about a few minutes ago. You were talking about the first Bulgarian Empire, and then you mentioned the Kievan Rus. I know one of the things that I've kind of studied myself a little bit was the Kievan Rus and
mm,
the character of Sviatoslav the Great.
mm,
I really love that story. I found out though that the Soviet Union, they had this anti-Normanist view of history, where they believed, I think it was like Sviatoslav was Slavic himself. There was no The Rurik dynasty is alleged to have came from, I believe, Sweden, and
mm.
that is where Sviatoslav and Vladimir were descended from. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think they were Germanic, or do you think they were like Slavic? Because I've had some people argue with me before, saying that they were, Slavic. There was no Germanic influence in the
Mm,
Kievan Rus.
I would say that it's very complicated story. Like when you have these genesis of these empires, that is not. Okay. Let's put it that way. All countries, all nations, or what we have now, like the French, the Germans, the Italians, the Bulgarians, whatever, they're formed in medieval period. We genetically and culturally, in some cases, could stretch our ancestry back to thousands of years before the medieval period. This is true, but the identity is formed around several things. One is religion, unfortunately, not original Aryan religions or Indo-European or whatever, call it as you want, then the languages, then the alphabet, and then some other things. And in that mixture, you have a lot of tribes that are influencing this thing. That's why when you go in Germany, when I was in southern Germany, in Bavaria, in Germany, you can see a lot of people like me. When you go to the northern part of Germany, there I can see much like say blondish Nordic types, and in Denmark, interestingly enough, because I had conversation with other people from Denmark, Danes. If you're talking about Germanic people, the language of the Danes is, or not the language of the Danes, but the Germanic languages are coming from Denmark. This is
Yeah.
proven. Like this is like the whole the supposedly, and look at how this works. Germans are less Germanic, genetically speaking, than the Danes, and less Germanic than which is funny because the Germans anyway, and less Germanic than the Brits, genetically speaking. The Brit, the on average is more Germanic, genetically speaking, than the Bavarians, which had something like, I believe the Bavarians had like similarity, like almost 66 or 67, 70% like Bulgarians, like sharing more or less the same
Genetic
genetic
material.
structure. Meanwhile, we are sharing something like 40% or 30 something percent with the Brits. So basically, you can see the influences there.
Yeah.
So going back to the Kievan Rus, I would say that Sviatoslav personally, maybe some of his male forefathers came from Scandinavia.
Yeah.
There are some evidence for that, but from female line, there are some things that. So my suspicion is that there was some. Okay, so basically there are different theories. One of the theories is that, of course, it's a local Slavic, whatever this means, or basically even the term Slavic is not accurate, to be honest. But let's say Slavic for the sense of understanding, a peasant. On the other hand, there was a Russian source. It's not Bulgarian. It's a Russian source that some scientists are criticizing. Russian source from 16th century that suggests that the mother of Sviatoslav was a Bulgarian princess.
Yeah.
And there
was
were
her name Olga? Wasn't her name Olga?
It's okay. I could read the article if you want, but maybe I will translate it.
It's okay. You don't. I mean, if you want to, you can. Like I said, this is your stream, bro. Whatever you want.
Okay, so because I want to be accurate, but basically the idea was that the mother Sviatoslav, there was a source, the Russian source. It's distant from the time of Sviatoslav, obviously. So some people were disputing that source. Basically, Sviatoslav, because there was this invasion of Kievan Rus in Bulgaria, things like that. He brought books with him, and the books were written in Old Bulgarian, which is Old Church Slavonic, but this is this is fake name. They were written in Old Bulgarian, was based on the southwestern Bulgarian dialects, and she read the books, and also she was Christian, and the Russian source said that it was so and so, it was a Bulgarian princess, and it is logical because if she was a Varangian or Scandinavian woman, she cannot read the Bulgarian books that were written in a language that was popular in Bulgarian aristocracy. So there was some logic in that, but there are some sources that say, yeah, but it's not very. We are not sure that they're meaning that this woman is the same and things like that. It's written several hundred years ago. It's not like a accurate source. So we don't know. I know that, for example, when Sviatoslav had this quite big army, some sources said that 50,000 men or something. In that army, he had Normans or Vikings, Varangians. They are called Varyagi, which, by the way, Bulgarians are calling them Rus. But the term Rus in Bulgarian, and this is before the Vikings, were referring to blonde people So I'm not sure that
Yeah.
this is coming from Scandinavia at all. Then in these Varangians you have Awans, you have Pechenegs, you have Bulgarians, you have these enormous army, and you have these different groups of people that
Different
were fighting.
ethnicities. Yeah.
Yes, that were fighting for these group, and these people basically were the founders of what is Kievan Rus. So I
It's a
suggest
blurry picture. It's a
I
blurry
believe
picture.
I believe that the Kievan Rus there was a certain element in the aristocracy. Um, how influential, for example, as we know, our the my beloved German leaders from the 20s and the 30s, they
Yeah.
believed they believed that that the Germanic, they're using this quite broad term, the Germanic influence in Russia is the leading influence. But I could argue quite successfully that the Bulgarian influence was much higher than the Germanic in the early, I'm opening the brackets, in the early history. Later, the Germans, like Catherine the Great, for example, like Romanov family, they were also quite Germanic.
Yes.
They had quite strong influence, and also St. Petersburg. The type of this is coming from after the Peter the Great. In the early history, it's questionable. A lot of the things, like titles, like the title Tsar, is taken from Old Bulgarian, like
Really
Bulyar. Yes, the first Tsar is Bulgarian Tsar. It's
interesting.
basically, yeah, Simeon the Great. And this is also very interesting. You can see how the linguists are kind of shitty, because generally speaking, the official version is Tsar is coming from Caesar, something like that. Meanwhile, the old Bulgarians said that is coming from the head. And this is quite strange because we don't know the modern word for head in Bulgaria is not Tsar. But the Persian word for Tsar is Tsur. So some 19th century Bulgarian historians had this idea that old Bulgarians are using some Persian word for head. And most likely it's like that. And in the Middle East, all these empires like Baltazar, like Novohodonosor, and things like that, all these emperors had these Sar or Sir or Sor at the end of their names. Like Baltazar means like
Yes.
the glory of Baal or the shining of Baal. So it is little bit like the Celtic names, um, like the names of the kings, like, or the Gothic names. The Gothic names are even better. Theodorich. So his name is Theodor, which is
Yes.
like a gift of the god Theodorus, like from Greek, and Rich. And the same thing with Bulgarian name, Isperich, and things like that. So
Interesting.
yeah, so basically this is like I don't know, like a title, like Tsar, most likely referring to that. And the other thing is Bolyar or Buril, which directly coming from Bulgarian tradition, like Bor or Borya means something like noble in Old Bulgarian. So it's the bolyars are coming from this tradition.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like I think that culturally we had more influence on the early Kievan Rus and later Russia and Ukraine than the Scandinavians. But there's some
That's
influence of
interesting.
Scandinavia.
That's
There influence
interesting.
of Scandinavia. It's not like I'm denying that, because there was this small. I'm trying to find this book. Wait a second.
Okay.
My girlfriend was cleaning up something. So okay, I can find it. The Varangian Guard, which is from
Yes.
Osprey Publishing, the Varangian Guard, 1988, 1453, and you can mention that it's a very small book. It's by Raffaele D'Amato, maybe Italian, illustrated by Giuseppe Rava. It's a very nice book. Most of the pictures of the things are taken from Byzantine or Roman and Bulgarian, basically by Byzantine archives, which is in Turkey. mostly,
Yeah.
and in Bulgarian museums, because this was the battleground of the Bulgarians against uh, Varangians or whatever, because Varangians were serving on the enemy side and we were killing each other quite with the how to say, the fortune of the Fortuna, the goddess of fortune, was swinging in different directions several times.
Yeah.
So this is the whole thing with the Varangians, and the simple answer is nobody knows.
I like that. That's a good way to put it, because I mean, we
Yes,
really don't. It was like a comment that I put on the screen earlier. I forget who had posted it, but it said basically history is nothing but a pack of lies agreed upon by people that weren't there. So there was one more question, just a quick one here. Bersingetorix asked, "What do you think, Nord Lux, about the out of Khazaria theory regarding the Ashkenazim Jews? What are your thoughts on that?" Because I
this
remember, I was going to say, I remember you told me on our last stream that there was this. You had sent me, I think it was a video that was talking about perhaps the Khazars, like the aristocracy of the Khazars, were actually blue-eyed and red-headed, and
absolutely the so basically the Khazars, it's a very big misunderstanding from what happened in the big this movement of people into Europe and the so-called Hunnic invasion. And some people said, oh, the Romans described the Huns like these Mongols. It's a total bullshit. Total
interesting,
bullshit. Like
interesting.
we're talking about Scytho-Sarmatian, Slovene, and East Germanic, and maybe even East Celtic tribes. There are some people suggesting that the Vandals were East Celtic. So, well, maybe there was some Asiatic elements, but there were not many. And how we know that? Well, again, genetic sequencing. The European Huns, they are not determined. There are some cultural, archaeological evidences, but they're like 90 something percent, 98% Eastern European. And again, when you find 2%, let's say Asiatic or whatever signal, they call it signal, doesn't mean that it's from admixture. It could be from again, these whatever ancient Hyperborean trace. Let's put it that way. That's why some people suggest that the Scandinavians are the closest, which is quite ridiculous. The Scandinavians are closest genetically to some American Indian tribes, which obviously is not true, but there are some traces, there are some similarities of that because of these ancient Hyperborean ancestry of that is in one direction went to America, in another direction we went to Europe. So basically the noble class of the Khazars were described like fair-skinned, blue-eyed, with fierce blue eyes and reddish hair, and they were called Akkasar or Arkasar. So
Oh,
most
okay.
likely Arkasar. But there were other group of people that were on the south of the Khazars, which most likely is what is now Caucasus Mountains, that are described like a dark featured, like really dark,
Yeah,
because the Arab journeyman that is describing the noble Khazars, which are fair-skinned and red-headed, and the Karakasar. The Kara in Turkic means like dark. He
yeah,
described them that the northern types or the aristocrats were like really fair-skinned and beautiful bodies. The southern or the
the
whatever
commoners, like the peasant
the
class, I guess you could say.
they're on the verge of the darkest Indians or the darkest Hindus. This
Really
is, yep,
interesting.
this is
Interesting.
very strange, and this is coming from Arab, by the way.
Wow.
Uh,
So yeah.
but I can read you some descriptions. They are quite interesting. Back in the time, they were much more how to say, because I was making my research, because I was preparing some interesting interesting research on the Bulgarian traditions, customs, things like that. So here the description of Huns, the description of Khazars. By the way, the Khazars, I don't know if you managed to publish that, but this is how, according to a monastery, can you send you to into Telegram? Okay,
Yeah, I've got it open. You should be able to.
this is how the Khazar look like according to medieval descriptions in the monastery.
Yeah, I think you sent me this picture. Let me see. I might be able to post it on the screen for the audience to see. Give me just a second. But if you want to
and
continue speaking, go
and
ahead.
the reason is that the upper class of the Khazars, actually the Arkasar, are the Alans. As simple as that.
Yeah,
And
they were an Iranic tribe, weren't they? An
and the
Iranic.
Alan means literally Aryan. Basically
Yeah,
this. And in Old Bulgarian, Alan means, or Alen means reddish. So even in the modern Bulgarian, in Alan or Alen, it means reddish, like red.
interesting.
Yeah. And there's a quite popular name in Old Bulgaria, Alan, not Alan, Alen. And in what is now Ukraine, there is also quite popular name, Alen, and means reddish. Another popular name, female name, is Roxana, which means basically blondie. Roxana
Really
means blondie. Yeah, it's an Iranic name. And basically, the princess that was married to Alexander the Great was called Roxana. And in the Jew movie, there were many crimes against historicity, but one of the crimes that Alexander was presented like homosexual, which is not true. Alexander was not homosexual. He was
Yeah.
whoremonger.
He was a real Chad, you could say.
Yes,
Right.
he was
Yes.
chat. He one of the things that don't people don't know, that he almost went to war against the Persians at the age of 15 because he fell in love with a Persian noble lady or princess or something, and she had very beautiful eyes, which I suggest are quite white, because the Persians. This is another misconception in the movie. The Persians are presented like quite dark Middle Eastern people, which they were not. And there were many evidences, including Greek art from the time, that are presenting the Persians actually whiter skinned than the Greeks.
Interesting.
Yep.
That kind of reminds me. I don't mean to go off on this tangent, but I was going to say when I was in high school, one of my friends that I worked with, he went to a different high school just across the state line in the state of North Carolina. And when we first became real good friends, he was dating a girl, and she was she was born here in the United States, but her parents were from Iran, from
Mm.
Iran. And this girl, when I met her, I was like, wow, because back then I mean, I was just in high school. I labored under this delusion that anyone from the Middle East is dark, just really dark headed, brown eyed. This girl, she was tall, she was fair skinned, she had blue eyes, and she had hair like light brown, very dark blonde hair. I was kind of interested to find that, that even nowadays there's still plenty of people in Iran who have these, what I guess we could call Aryan traits. Anyways, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Even though take in mind that the Aryans, what they found in the Kurgans that are usually related uh, with the Iranic people, whatever. It is usually different supracial time. It was not only Nordic, and if it was Nordic type, it was not the Hallstatt Nordic that is in Central Europe, which of course is related to the Hallstatt culture, which is in what's now Austria, and the Hallstatt culture is like in southern part of the Germanic ones, and the culture, by the way, was Celtic. It was Celtic culture with supposedly predominantly Nordic type of people. When they say Nordic, I mean Hallstatt Nordic. There are other supraracial types that are related with these Bronze Age types that had the blonde genes in the east, which we are talking about the Aryans already, the Afanasyev culture. They had quite a large amount of these blonde genes, but they were not only blonde. There were a quite large substrate of what is now Puntids, which is basically northern and southern Puntids, less southern. Southern Puntids is, let's say, obviously on the south, but the northern and the classical Puntids are part of these migrations to the Iranian Persian plateau and whatever. So they were also taking part of these Aryan invasion in the Central Asia, so to say. So it's and also another thing, the Kurgan Nordic type is called either Kurgan Nordid or it was called Proto-Nordid for some reason, and the both and the classical Puntid, because they're living around the Pontic
steppe,
the Pontic steppe, or the also called Cimmerian Pontus, because of the Cimmerians. The Pontic supraracial types is basically on the Proto-Nordic or whatever, is also the people that actually were the so-called Slavs. Interesting enough. Yeah. So basically, it's not exactly how the Russian propaganda describe them, like these always dressed in white and with these platinum blonde long hairs and things like that. And they're always, it's just a Russian propaganda, let's say. But the northern Puntids, the Kurgan Nordids, and maybe to some degree the southern Puntids, even though the southern Puntids are most highly spread racial types in what is now Bulgaria, Romania, southern, basically in Ukraine, is not the most popular, but one of the most popular racial types. These people are also part of the ethnogenesis of the Slav people, but they also took part in the invasion of the Iranian plateau. So this is the part of, and take in mind that there was several different waves. So you have these Iranian speakers that were speaking Iranian languages. They lived in the Iranian plateau for thousands of years, and then they moved back to Europe, and from Europe there were migration back to Asia, and from Eastern Europe to Western Europe, and even some people are speculating that these let's say migration of the Cimmerians, the basis of these, the legendary Asir, the gods in the Scandinavian mythology.
And then there's the Vanir as well.
Supposedly Vanir, but this is one of the theory, of course. Supposedly the Vanir is the local tribes that absorbed, being much more numerous, the Asir invaders. And there's some evidence for that. There were these archaeologists in the 20s and the 30s that suggested that archaeologically there was this influence of the Thracians. They were using the term Traco-Cimmerians or Thracian
and Cimmerian, you could say.
Traco-Cimmerian influence over the Hallstatt culture, like this.
Interesting.
In their nobility, because then you can see these different type of burials there that were absorbed. And this is nothing new. Like much later, the Celts had this invasion on the Balkans, and you can see basically the same thing. Like the Celts in one generation, you can how to say differentiate between the Celtic and the Thracian burial. I mean, culturally,
Yeah.
and then you can see, like for example, the Celts are starting to adopt a lot of Thracian, for example, swords which run fire, and
Yeah.
then the Thracians adopting Celtic swords. So they had this cultural exchange. And
Yes.
after
Yes.
two generations, you cannot differentiate between Thracian and Celtic. And my suggestion is that they were melted in the Thracian population. The same thing happened with the Cimmerians. Basically, they were supposedly had Cimmerian lineage, but basically they were Germans. So
Interesting. That's
not a
that's
not a
interesting.
not a big surprise. But there was these oral traditions. For example, the Franks in the Frankish annals, they suggested that a group of Cimmerians came in and gave the first kings of the Franks. The same thing for Bulgarians. There's this pseudo Procopius that suggests that Bulgarians are partially Cimmerian tribe. So the Cimmerians, for some reason, they were quite renowned back in the time, like 3,300 years ago. They were quite famous. Maybe
Yes.
that's why they were there, because they were the first people that was these quite fierce horseback riders, well
Yeah.
built. They were quite well built people, and most likely they gave the horse archer, because usually it's thought that this horse archer thing is called Parthian tactics, right?
Yes.
But
Parthian. Okay.
recently they found some description of Cimmerian warriors shooting from the horseback, like 700-800 years before the Parthians. And the Parthians were also Aryan tribe called Parni.
Yeah.
So yeah, and one of the few, going back to this Iranian Aryan tribe, one of the few tribes, the Parthians, that basically annihilated a whole Roman army in an open battle, which was
Oh,
quite
wow.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
That's impressive. What was this battle?
what's the name? It is actually
I might be able to look it up real quick.
I must Google it, but I'm pretty sure that this is like Crassus. Crassus was this is during the time of Caesar. So
Battle of Carrhae. Carrhae. Is that what it's called? It
yes,
was in
I don't know how.
53 BC.
Yeah, basically Crassus was wiped out, and his son, that was, by the way, much better general than Crassus, was also killed in that battle. And basically, they were wiped out in the open battle by the tactics of the Parthians. And you
Yeah.
can look at the physiological descriptions of the Parthians. They were quite obviously European-looking people, quite European looking. You can see the statues of the Parthians or the
Yeah.
Parni.
Yeah, the battle happened in the Mesopotamian city of Carrhae, which is modern Haran
Correct.
in Turkey. Yeah, I guess in Anatolia.
Mm.
Interesting. Interesting. Um yeah, Crassus. That's correct, Andale. Um, let's see here. We've been going for about an hour and 3 minutes now. This has been really interesting. I've really enjoyed talking about some of this obscure history of Eastern Europe. But I was wondering if you might want to switch gears for this last hour and talk about some modern issues
Mm.
in Eastern Europe, and also maybe some we I think our friend Volga Jaeger wanted us to speak a little bit about perhaps the commonalities between Appalachia and perhaps the Balkans. You could say uh, it's
I
kind of
found
interesting.
I found out that you like to make moonshine, which is in Balkan equivalent is rakia, I suppose. So
Oh, really?
yes,
Interesting.
yeah, it's not exactly rakia because I suppose the moonshine is made by some kind of
Well, I'm in the process. I haven't made any myself yet, but that was one of my goals for this year. And I'm actually working on acquiring, I've got some of the stuff together to make a moonshine still of my own, just a small
mhm,
one. I remember my great grandfather, he made moonshine. Uh, and I remember him showing me his moonshine still. We make it out of corn. Uh,
mhm,
the Scots Irish that came over here, they back in the old world they would use rye and make they would use rye to make whiskey. But when they came here to the New World, they discovered, quite easily that they could just use corn, since corn was a bit more plentiful.
mhm.
But what was it you said that they call it there in the Balkans? This
Rakia, rakia.
ra- rakia.
Yep.
Interesting.
The word is the origin of the word of the word supposedly is Arabic, but most likely is Persian. And
Interesting.
and there was a word rakia in Hebrew, interestingly enough,
Hmm.
and means something totally different from what rakia means in the Balkan languages. But this comes from most likely from the influence of the Persian Empire over the Hebrew language, because the
Yes.
Hebrews adopted a lot of Indo-European words like a goy, for example.
Yeah.
Goy is an Indo-European word and basically is means cow. Literally, goyim means like a cowboys,
Yeah.
something,
Oh
some,
man.
something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I suppose they didn't like the Indo-Europeans or the Aryans masters back in the time, and they related them with the cattle breeding.
Yeah.
So which is this is also another thing. Indo-Europeans had a lot of cows, and the cow is a sacred animal, and the bull also in some of the Indo-European legends is
Was it
also sacred.
Mithras? The cult
Yes,
of Mithras. Yeah, they
yeah.
were. The
He
bull
was
was heavily.
he was killing the bull, but the meaning of the bull is quite like he was sacred, but he's creator of the universe, and the killing of the bull is overcoming. And this is I'll go in the other direction, but basically the cult of Mithra is very militaristic, very elitist, and very warrior cult. No women allowed, only warriors, and there's levels of initiations. And the cult of Mithra had a lot of heavy influence over the early Christianity, like in Catholicism and Orthodoxy had quite, let's say, initiation levels in not initiation level traditions that were copied from the Mithranists, and the early Christians hated Mithranists because the Mithranists are warriors. They also despise the Christians because the Christians, according to them, are basically like rabble and women.
Yeah.
but basically who won at the end? The rabble and the women.
Yeah.
So 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 basically this is the as I said, the first Persian religion that was very influential over the not only in the Balkans but in all Europe. I believe there was a Mitrianic temple in in London, and also there was a Mitrianum or Mitrium, I believe, obviously in Rome, and there
Yeah.
was in Germany and all over the empire. Basically, there was all over the empire. But going back to Appalachia, what I found that is similar to the Balkans to a large degree is this: the free spirit, or at least what was back in the time the free spirit of the people,
Yeah.
and also kind of rebellious type of people.
Yes. I'd say that that's been cultivated by your all's struggles with, say, the Ottoman Empire, centuries back. Do you think am I right there or am I incorrect? Or,
I think it's just because the it is a very mountainous region, and especially back in the medieval period was covered with forests. And
Yes.
talking only for the Bulgarians, but I suppose the Serbs and the Croats and the forefathers of the Romanians are more or less the same situation. The Bulgarians didn't like to live in big cities,
Yeah.
and this is also mentioned in several sources, medieval sources, that Bulgarians had big cities, and usually the administration lived there, but most of the population preferred to live in the countryside.
Oh
And
yeah.
I suppose this is much more natural.
Oh, it
Uh,
is. It is, I believe, certainly.
and yeah, this is and another thing, going back to the modern times, by a guy that is quite popular, at least in the NS and nationalist circles in Europe, but not so much in America, as I found out. A guy called Otto Skorzeny,
Oh yes, Otto. Yes, I'm really interested in Otto. He has a.
very Aryan chat. Let's
Oh
say,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, he was an operator of the highest caliber.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, you could say his legacy is tarnished a little bit after what happened with following World War II. But I mean, you do have to realize that he was well known as an operator of the highest class. He was targeted, of course, and I mean, what was he supposed to do? You could say, I mean, people like him and Klaus Barbie, they sort of ran with these Western intelligence agencies. That doesn't diminish their actions during World War II, though.
Is
The
it?
daring rescue of Mussolini, and among other things.
Is it? I mean, I'm not absolutely sure that this is true. Actually, how
Oh,
how
really?
would yeah,
What's your
because
opinion?
I recommend the people to read My Commando Operations of Otto Skorzeny. I shared them in my group in Bulgarian. They're a little bit different translation, like The Secret War, but actually in English is My Commando Operation. In German is Meine Kommando Unternehmen. And
Interesting.
basically he's describing, it's a at least for me, it was a very interesting book. I had a habit of jogging in the evening, so I've listened the audiobook, then I've read the Bulgarian paperback
Translation.
version. Yeah, the Bulgarian translation, and very interesting book. He's describing his early years in Austria, the struggle of Austria to rejoin with Germany, his entering the Austrian NSDAP, the German Nazi party, whatever, National Socialist Arbeit working party. So basically, then he describes the Second World War, his opinion that there were treacherous. I mean, it's not opinion. I mean, he was field commander back in the time and quite heroic too. His opinion is that a lot of the German generals were either stupid or treacherous.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way. They were working either for the Soviets or for the British
one
intelligence,
of the two. Yeah.
or for the both, which also very common. By the way, the Soviets managed to infiltrate the the Americans and the Brits with a lot of communists,
Oh yeah.
and
Absolutely.
as we know, these supposed Nazis that were working for the Americans, a lot of them, according to Skorzeny, were quote communist agents, basically. So basically, they were,
Interesting.
yes, basically these lefties spurging about I don't know about Barbie, I don't know in details, but about Skorzeny, I know that after the Second World War there were thousands. I had a friend, a comrade that is much more knowledgeable about Otto Skorzeny. He said that 99% of the articles about him are total bullshit.
Really interesting.
Yes,
Is it
yeah.
is it Christopher? Is it Christopher that might know a lot about him,
No,
or a
Dominic.
different guy? Dominic.
Dominic, he's from Eastern Germany, and
Okay.
he made some research back in the time, and he said that 99% of the times bullshit. Basically, Otto Skorzeny also mentions that in the book at the end of his My Command operation that he was accused of the most mind-blowingly stupid things. Like he was supposedly Otto Skorzeny was the Israeli general Moshe Dayan.
Yeah,
He was,
I read that before
yeah.
actually.
So
Yes.
basically, also he had a connection with the real Hitler that was living in some kind of secret German base in Argentina or in
Yeah.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Then he was training Nazi commandos that were fighting for Israel. This is, by the way, call me bullshit that was coming. That's why I'm referring to, because this is the last bullshit is coming like 14 or 15 years after the death of Otto Skorzeny, is that he worked for Mossad. This is based on the
Yeah, I've read that before. It
yeah.
actually says that just on like for most people, whenever they hear the name Otto Skorzeny, naturally, at least here in America, they're going to go look at Wikipedia. And
Mm,
Wikipedia said that he had worked for Mossad for a short
real,
period of time.
but this is based on on an article that was published in the official Mossad magazine in 1989, and I'm not absolutely sure that we can. And most of the claims after that are based on this article, so we just don't know
Yeah.
that this is true or not. So
Oh
my
man, it's unfortunate, I mean, there's a lot of history I've looked at. I mean, even like Operation Gladio and the Years of Lead in Italy. There's like different takes. There's different slants on things, and it's really hard to get a picture or an idea of what really fucking happened. And I think this is on purpose, of course. It's hard to figure out. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
what I was trying to say that his Otto Skorzeny was operating on the Balkans. A lot of people don't know that he was fighting against basically the partisans of Tito, Joseph Tito,
Yes,
and
yes, Tito.
he mentioned that, and I cannot find a proof for that, but he mentioned he was not like. What I'm trying to say in some of the groups of in Telegram is that they're too much purist spurging by some people that never ever seen a naked woman in real life. I think.
Yeah, they've never touched a titty in their life. You could say.
Yeah, yeah, they're too much purist spurging in some way. They think that some parts of Europe they're some kind of subhumans or something. And what Otto Skorzeny said, that is, I think it's very respectable man. I mean, real hero.
Yeah,
He said that he never been very impressed by the. And this is his personal opinion. I mean, I had some respect for the book. He was not very impressed by Rosenberg and by his book, The Myth of 20th Century.
oh, he wasn't a
And
fan of it.
yeah, he said
Skorzeny wasn't interesting.
basically he wrote this thing in 1975, and he said that according to him Europe must be like a rainbow of colors. Everyone must live together but not mixing, of course, because it will become a brown shit show, which is going on right now. And he said that there are many nationalities, and here's that were fighting in Waffen SS, like Albanians, Bulgarians, Croats, Serbs, whatever,
Yeah,
and many of them were in his units. And I cannot find, but there was a strong rumor amongst I knew Bulgarian Waffen SS soldiers that survived the purges after the Second World War, and there was a small colony of them in my home city. There was a claim that there was a specialist that worked for. Specialist means some kind of operator,
yeah,
obviously.
well
That
trained operator that
that worked for Otto Skorzeny with explosives, and
Yeah.
he mentioned that there were. And this is also very unknown, at least for me, it was unknown fact that Otto Skorzeny were working with a group of frogmen like these,
The Navy,
these.
like the Navy frogmen. Is that what you were?
Yes,
Yes.
Navy frogmen. They were blowing up bridges on Danube, and they were trying to slow down the Soviets. And it's
Yeah.
a very interesting, very dirty war. And he said that there were locals, there were Russians that anti-communist Russians that were joining them, and they were trying to breach the blockade of Budapest. And very interesting book for me.
Yeah.
It's very,
That's
very interesting.
interesting. That's
Very interesting.
fascinating.
Very interesting. And basically, his claims about this high level penetration of anti-national socialist treacherous German generals, mostly from Prussian descent, because there was these. You see, these people, mostly from the Prussian nobility, they were looking down on these Bavarians and looking down on Hitler. That was the Prussian, not basically Bohemian soldier, like he was
Yeah.
coming from the Austrian Empire, and they were looking down on these people. And Otto Skorzeny said something about that Saxons and the Prussians were looking down on the Austrian soldiers, which is, I don't know why.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and he
Well,
said many
I was going to
many.
ask you.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you real quick. Skorzeny himself was, if I remember correctly, his surname, is it Prussian as well, or does it have some? I don't know. What do you know much about his ancestry? I was just curious.
Well, I don't know actually what he said that he's from Austrian descent. Not very surprisingly,
Yeah.
he joined nationalist or German nationalist student groups in the 90. So basically, in his late student years in university, he joined one of these German nationalist groups, and he was enjoying what is that, fencing. So these scars on
He
his
was
face is, yeah, from
his.
the.
It says he was Austrian origin. My bad. Some reason it says here that his surname, the name of Skorzeny, is of Polish origin. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, is
I don't. You see, this is very, very complicated thing with the Austro-Hungary. Basically, the thing with the family names is I'm trying to explain this thing. For example, the name Hitler is written in 4 different variants because nobody gave a shit back in 19th century. These people were commoners. They were not Jews. I must tell you that there is not a fucking Jewish thing with Hitler. And there was a written like Hitler, which is most likely the real father of Hitler was Hitler, which is the brother of the guy that basically what is the name in English? What is the phrase in English that adopted Hitler, the
yeah,
father of Hitler, basically his adopter, the brother of his adopter was the real father of Hitler, of the father of Hitler. This is the most complicated explanation that I could give, but this is most likely explanation. So these people, the one brother is written in the Austrian registers like Hitler with D, the other is written like Hitler with U, with
interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
lots of
And
different spellings.
the same thing is with the mother, Schickel Gruber, which is also written in 3 or 4 different variants because these Austrian administrative units, they didn't give a shit because they're commoners. They're just
Yeah,
normal people, and they are not some nobility that with these long names like August von Carol Maria, I don't know
yeah,
what the fuck. And
yeah.
basically, for the commons, nobody give a shit. Even if he had some kind of Polish upbringing, he doesn't look like a Polish really. Like he looks like a mixture between, like anthropologically speaking, between, let's say, Nordic and Dinaric, and let's say maybe a little bit of uh, Alpine type, which
Yes.
is, I suppose, normal for Austria.
Oh yeah.
And he was quite tall. I mean, he was quite
Yes.
tall.
He was
And
an impressive warrior. I mean,
yep,
it's
very
he was
impressive,
outstanding.
very
Um,
impressive, quite brave. Yeah.
I'd like to. Do you have a PDF of the book that you just mentioned? The my what was it? The My Commando.
I
Uh,
have an audio book in English. It's quite good translation, with the exception of the names.
yeah,
The guys that are reading the name, or maybe
are not
it's
able to pronounce them correctly.
no, it's the German names are quite butchered, and also the
Yeah,
Russian Slavic names quite butchered. But otherwise, it's good book, deserve to read, and he can take you at least couple of, I don't know, days, or maybe a week, or even two if you're a slow reader, so you can have a time to think about what he wrote. But it's mostly description of the his campaigns in the eastern and the western front.
yeah,
He had, by the way, he criticized a lot of high ranking officials in the NSDAP, with the exception of two guys that he had quite high opinion. One is Hitler, not very big surprise. The other is Hess.
yeah.
Uh,
Rudolf
he
Hess.
he said very good things about Hitler. He said, well, of course, he had the responsibility for the mistakes in the Second World War, but actually his advisors are not on his level at all. And he said many good things about him, like really good
Interesting.
things. Yeah, because
Interesting.
obviously there was a close relations. I mean, Hitler really likes Skorzeny, maybe because they were from the same part of the German
Austria.
ones. Yeah.
Yes.
um, and also he said some good things about Hess, that he was really, like, really this uh, noble
He
guy
was
that was
a loyal.
loyal and
Yes.
very noble guy that was basically unjustly imprisoned for so many years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Most of his life.
And
His life.
otherwise he said one good and one bad thing about Rosenberg. He said that Rosenberg had a good things in mind, but he was not up to the task of being these well, let's say
He
he
had some
didn't
good
have the,
ideas, but he wasn't up to the pressure, you could say.
yes,
Yeah.
and otherwise he criticized a lot of Himmler. He criticized a lot of
What did he think about Goering?
Goebbels.
What did he think about Goering?
About Göring, I never had. I mean, about Göring, he described a moment. So basically, it is one of the last. At the end of the book, he described that Skorzeny was basically organizing the defense in Eastern Prussia against the Soviets.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because basically, if you look at the Wikipedia, they will say that it's because Wikipedia is redacted by the Russians, and the real Russians, as we know from the Ukrainian war, they never lose, they never were defeated, they never were outsmarted. They're always these guys that never had anything like a defeat in their history books. But what Skorzeny is describing, that actually the defense of Eastern Prussia, at least in areas that he was defending, were relatively successful. They managed to repel several attacks with heavy casualties for the Soviets. In Wikipedia, for the same operation, they claim that it's basically some kind of uh, diversion. It was a fake attack or something like that.
Yeah.
But
So it's
anyway,
yeah.
basically about Göring, he said that Göring was not up to the task. He promised, but he didn't deliver very often.
Yeah.
This is what he said, and also he had some. He mentioned that, especially at the end, Göring was, at least he was brave. He said that he was visiting the front lines and trying to encourage the
The troops.
the troops, the Luftwaffe, because the Luftwaffe had infantry divisions on the ground that were not very successful, and he was engaging one or two times with Göring at the end, but he didn't have very high opinion about him. So basically, he was criticizing a lot of these high-ranking high in command, with the exception of another thing that he mentioned was this guy. What was the name? I forgot the name. This guy, he published this book that's suggesting that a bunch of German Nazis were working for the Americans. This general. Oh, what was the name of this general? God damn it! He was in the intelligence service.
Hmm.
Uh,
I'm not sure. You would probably know more about that. I don't think I'm of much help right now. I'm just curious. Just one quick question: have you ever heard of a guy whose name was Alan Husaf? Have you ever heard of him? He was a Breton nationalist. There's allegedly a connection between him and World War II. I mean, or
Never.
him and Skorzeny, I should say.
What
Uh,
was the connection?
Allegedly, I'd have to pull it up here. I know we're going. Man, we've went off on all these crazy different tangents in this show, which I'm fine with that. I love doing that. Let me see. Let me pull it up again. I first heard about this guy several months ago. I actually was reading a book about the Scotch Irish, and a guy named Barry R. McCain. He's the author of the book, and he is where I first heard. Yeah, he was a Breton nationalist. I'll send it to you real quick. It's just, unfortunately, it's just a fucking Wikipedia page. But Barry, Mr. McCain, he knew this guy in his travels back to Ireland to
Hmm.
look up his ancestry, his Scotch Irish ancestry. Let me
Hmm.
send it to you real quick. But he mentions in that book that Husaf, he managed to escape, I believe, the French, and there was a rumor that Mr. McCain couldn't, he wasn't able to confirm this, but there has always been a rumor that this Alan Husaf guy had worked for Otto Skorzeny on the Western Front, and Otto Skorzeny helped arrange his escape from France into, I believe, Ireland. Like I said, this is fuzzy. Anyway, I
Otto,
didn't mean to.
Otto had connection with Ireland. By the way, this is true, and it is not. I mean, I think that at some point he tried to settle in Ireland because he's under total pressure after the Second World War.
Yeah,
And most of the time he was in Spain, but Spain was also not very reliable. So for some, that's why I'm opening the question about his working for Mossad at some later period, but also it's kind of fishy because supposedly he must be removed from this list of these shit Wiesenthal, and he was never removed from this list of war criminals,
yes.
and so why the fuck he will work for Mossad in that case? So basically it's a speculation. It's a very high speculation. I think it's some kind of Jew mindfuck. And it's and another story that is pushed by the Brits is that Otto Skorzeny was in Berlin,
Yeah.
and he denies being in Berlin. Actually, he was in Vienna, according to his book, and he was in Berlin. And this is mixed because both the Soviets and the Brits and the Americans think that Adolf Hitler escaped, and not only escaped, but escaped with a bunch of gold and treasures and things like that.
Yeah.
And the official story, because now they didn't claim that Adolf Hitler escaped, the official story claims that uh, they removed the part that Adolf Hitler escaped with Otto Skorzeny and bunch of and enormous amount of gold and treasures and diamonds, things like that. Now they claim that basically only Otto Skorzeny with the money and some high-ranking Waffen SS officials escaped with the money, and Adolf Hitler didn't escape. And Otto Skorzeny asked the people that interrogated them, because he was many times interrogated after the war, why the fuck I will be here with you when I have billions, millions or billions of dollars in gold and jewelry, and I could hide with Adolf Hitler in some other place? And this
Yeah.
is very good question. Why the fuck he's
Yeah,
there?
yeah, that's true. That's a very good point you bring up there.
And basically this is the same thing with basically when I said that I spoke like a distant, very distant relatives of Adolf Hitler in Austria. They are not Hitler anymore. They changed their family name several times
Yeah.
because they were under severe pressure. A lot of people don't know, but the Soviets were occupying Austria for the until early 1950s, I believe, and
Yeah.
they were literally hunting down Hitler's family members, and
Yes.
they were extorting under severe pressure, tortures. Understand, or tortures under severe pressure. They were extorting a lot of supposedly whatever they could find for the early history of Adolf Hitler. Nothing. I mean, they literally believing some of the communist bullshit that Hitler being Jewish or financed by the Jews or whatever. Nothing happened, because if they found something, they will publish it officially.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why even the modern shit, the foreign minister of Russia was referring as Hitler being Jewish, because in their unofficial propaganda, it's unofficial because it's shit. They were pushing this thing, because basically this was the unofficial propaganda of the communists after the Second World War, that the capitalists, the big capital, was pushing the Germans against the Soviet Union, and the Jews are part of the big capital, so they were pushing the Germans against the Soviet Union. But this happened only after when the Israelis tricked Stalin, because at first Stalin was helping the creation of the Israeli state in the Middle East.
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
and when they figure out that the Israelis are basically sitting on two chairs, but one of the chairs much more comfortable, aka America, they basically kicked the Soviets. That's why the Israelis were pushing this kibbutz shit that was totally utopian and bullshit, and they leave it like there were some kibbutz, but they are never being very efficient. I believe there are one or two kibbutzes in Israel right now, and this is it. I mean, this is how the things works. The Soviet Union were kind of friendly towards the founding of Israel, and they even pushed a lot of Jews, including from Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Officially in 1947, I believe, they were pushed out of Bulgaria or integrated in the high ranking of the Bulgarian Communist Party. This is unofficial, of course, but it's backed by a lot of evidences. And basically, this is it. This is how the things worked back in the time, and they found out that the Zionists basically tricked the Soviets. And
Wow.
then they changed the Soviets changed their states, and suddenly the Zionists became very evil. The anti-Semitism was still bad, by the way, but anti-Zionism was okay.
Yeah.
So basically they started to push this bullshit propaganda of Nazis, Zionists, big capital working against this, the heaven of the working people, Soviet Union. And a lot of the modern lip-tart propaganda in the West is based on these Soviet lies.
Interesting.
And the same thing is with these large speculations about Nazis working like Operation Paperclip, whatever. Well, a lot of these scientists, they were never National Socialists. And what exactly National Socialist means? I mean, in Germany, at the peak of the National Socialist Party, right? Well,
Yeah.
the National Socialist Workers' Party. There were around, I believe, Otto Skorzeny said around between 2 and 3 million people that were part of the party,
Yeah.
active. In comparison, at the peak of the Bulgarian Communist Party, this is around. So the population back in the Third Reich was around 70 something, or let's say 80 million, but I'm not
The
sure.
third.
Maybe
Are you talking about Germany?
yeah,
I
yeah.
believe
About
I
the,
believe it was 60 or 70 million. I
I believe
believe.
it's
I could be wrong.
it was around 70. I believe it's 70 something because I'm not sure that we're counting the Germans that was out of the official borders, like in Bohemia, which is in
Yeah.
Czechoslovakia, whatever.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Let's say it's 70. Let's say it's 70. So basically, 1 or let's say 2 or 3 million from 70.
Yeah.
You can
That's a small percentage,
okay. In the peak of the Bulgarian Communist Party, in the peak before
Okay.
in the peak of the Bulgarian Communist Party in 1918 something was 1 million from a population of 8 something million.
Wow, that's a huge percentage.
It's a huge
compared to
percentage.
yes.
It's a huge percentage. Take in mind that before the coming of the communists to power, they had something like 2 to 5,000 members from 6 million.
Wow. So what would Bulgaria's population be today? Would you imagine? I'm just curious.
The population of Bulgaria right now, I can tell
Yeah.
you the official data from the last census, which they were hiding for quite a long time because first of all we are the first. I mean we have the lowest birth rate in the world, I believe.
Bulgaria does?
Yes, Bulgaria does,
Really?
and we are basically the first that will be gone from Europe. Plus, the large part of these birth rates consists of non-whites, aka gypsies, and some Turks, but mostly gypsies.
Yeah.
Like maybe like 2/3 of the newly born are like these types, and 1/4 of the population basically. This is what. Okay, so basically the official data said that Bulgaria right now is around 6.5 million, and 1/4 like gypsies and Turks, around 1/4. But this is based on self-determination. I have some arguments about this number even because some gypsies could say that they're Bulgarians or whatever. But yeah, and this is thanks to communists and thanks to the Russians, by the way,
Man, it's
because
terrible.
in 1943 the census, and take in mind that the census in 1943 is based on a population that is basically the same. Like 8 years ago we had the same population. Our territories were much bigger because there were the present territory of what is now North Macedonia was included in the Bulgarian Tsardom because of the Germans. Basically, they knew that the ethnic population there were Bulgarians. They didn't know that they're ancient Macedonians or something. Then a part of what is now northern Greece was included. And back in the time, only, I believe, 40,000 gypsies were counted in 1943. And thanks to at 1989, thanks to communism and thanks to the policies that were anti-racial, 3 million Bulgarians abroad. I don't know. I don't know how many of these Bulgarians are Bulgarians, to be honest, because a lot of them are counting the gypsies that are working like in Germany. So I'm not sure about that number too. So don't be so enthusiastic. And what I'm trying to say is that the Bulgarian Communist Party introduced these very. So when they say they introduced it, this means that the Stalinists gave this order, because the Bulgarian Communist Party is like basically like just a vassals of the Soviet Union. They don't have independent politics.
Yeah, they had no independence at all. They were just,
They were
puppets,
even
you could say.
2 times our great non-Bulgarian dictator Todor Zhivkov had this idea to Bulgaria to become a part of the Soviet Union. But this is whole another debate why it didn't happen and so on. But basically, they were so dependent on the Soviet Union because, as I mentioned, they didn't have a popular support. They were kept in power only because of the Soviet army that occupied Bulgaria. And basically, what happened was that they had this genius idea, but I think that is made for purpose, that they took the want of the people. And this is totally Marxist. I mean, in Poland, they didn't nationalize the lands, for example. And I believe in Hungary, they didn't nationalize the land. So people had some kind of partial private property, which is a normal thing, I believe. And a lot of people, including my family, that were upper class people, were totally smashed. Like,
wow,
if you have some kind of, if you're from the upper class, you're enemy of the people, so ex-human.
During the
if you had some kind of pro-German sympathies during the First or the Second World War, enemy of the people and things like that. So basically, totally Jewish, how to say, reaction. Official data said that 33,000 of the Bulgarian elite were killed in the so-called People's Court. So, but actually, the number is most likely is much higher. So basically, they killed officially, this official number, 33,000 people in Bulgaria. As I said, from the middle and upper class.
Wow.
And then, but actually, as I said, the number is most likely much higher because there was so-called, and there were a lot of Jewish symbolism, Masonic symbolism. They are one of this department of these People's Court were only Jew courts, whatever it's called, judges and lawyers, and it's very, very Jewish names. And some people were even saying that this is kind of communist shabash against the people that supposedly were saving the Jews, because you must understand in this evil myth about the Holocaust, there are two good goyim. One are the Danes, the other the Bulgarians. We, the Danes, the Bulgarians, are the only that saved the Jews.
Yeah.
Anyway, from what we saved the Jews is very, very. It's a whole another question. But in Bulgaria, they were making roads and working in some camps and things like that. And most likely this is because Hitler were afraid of a British and maybe British Turkish, to some degree. Some sources suggest British Turkish invasion on the Balkans, and they were keeping Bulgarian army and I believe one reserve German division as a reserve for eventual British or even American British Turkish invasion on the Balkans. This never happened, but this is one of the suggestions of the historians, that the Bulgarian army was never sent to the end. Of course, these myths that the Bulgarian army will never fight the Russians. Well, we did. We fought the Russians in the First World War, and I will claim that we were rather successful. So basically, a lot of the modern myths about the Second World War. The Second World War is largely mythologized, and this is because the modern political, how to say, myths and narratives dictated from the Second World War. That's why these shits are comparing these political, physical, and psychological dwarf Putin with Hitler, even though he basically is a big fan of Stalin. And then they're comparing the other shit, Zelensky, like the other dwarf, like some kind of great figure, like Churchill. They can compare with Churchill. Churchill was shit.
Yes, he was.
Basically, So basically, this is the narrative, like Devo, that the Russians are Nazis or something. They're not
Yeah.
Nazis. They're fucking Soviets, and
Yeah.
they're the idiots, and it's don't. You cannot compare the modern Russia with anything, even with the old Soviet Union. You cannot compare it. It's like mixture between a Russian variant of multiculturalism mixed with some kind of modern propaganda bullshit. So basically,
Some sort of modern, like, capitalistic propaganda, or
yeah,
uh,
it's like
with a
this.
mixed with a little bit of Soviet influence, maybe. I don't know.
It's it's
I don't know.
it's it's weird. It's multiculturalist. It's Russian variant of multiculturalism,
Yeah.
basically, because there are a lot of things like Dugin. I'll start with Dugin, that he said that if Negroes, and I believe he said these things like 4 or 5 years ago in a stream with a button, this British idiot, conservative idiot. He said that if Africans settle in Russia, start to speak Russian and accept Orthodoxy, they will become Russians.
Russian. Yeah.
And this is the best, how to say, description of what is Russian nationalism. Is basically anti-white imperialism that is based on bunch of modern narratives that are mixed together and creating one big shit.
Yeah.
And this is
That's a
the
great way to
best.
put it.
This is the best. The best Russians, the best Russian nationalists actually expelled from Russia, and they're fighting in Ukraine on the side of the Ukrainians. This is a fact. This is what we have. One example is, for example, the lead singer of this group, Molt. He basically fled Russia, I believe, in 2014, because basically, if he was captured in Russia, he would be sent in penal colony, and then it's not a good thing to be captured in Russian penal colony.
Yeah, it
And
would be terrible.
he joined the Russian Legion or whatever in Ukraine. So there are a lot of guys that are Russians, and they deny the present, how to say, state, which is imperial state.
The present
Of Russia.
paradigm, I guess you
Yeah,
could say.
yeah.
I was about to say, Nord Lux, we're coming up on the home stretch here. We've got about 10 minutes till we've been going for 2 hours.
Mm.
I was going to say, man, there's so much more that I wish we could have talked about too. You've got a lot broad knowledge on a lot of topics. I wanted to say, the door is always open whenever you wanted to come back on stream. I'd enjoy to have you back on here.
I will say something. I was for one day in Ukraine, actually, like in the end of the previous year.
Yeah.
And it's not nothing special. I was just helping a family. So basically, I had Ukrainian refugees that came in the beginning of the war. My experience with them is rather positive. I'm pretty honest, by the way. I was even surprised. Very nice people, very nice. Like old guy with his wife and one of his daughters and their children. And their grandchildren, without being this family being especially nationalistic, they were raised in a specific good way of nationalism, like a wolf of their father wanted, things like that. And generally, I had quite, let's say, much higher opinion about Ukrainians, especially their performance on the battlefield after I've recognized them. So I decided to help this family to extract their relatives that was still in Ukraine. So I spent one day in Ukraine, like in Western Ukraine. And it was experience. Let's put it that way. A kind of experience, like Europe after the Second World War. We had only the Balkan, the Yugoslav wars in the 90s and early 2000s, but in comparison, in scale, they're much smaller than the what is going on now in Ukraine. And to be honest, from a nationalistic or Nietzscheanic perspective, if you wish, Ukrainians are maybe the only or one of the few nations that are willing to fight and to survive in the modern world. Most of the Europeans and Americans are quite demoralized from this consumer-based society. They don't want to struggle. They don't want to fight, which is not very Nietzscheanic and not very national socialistic and nationalistic or Darwinistic or not very Aryan in nature. Let's put it that way. And yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting experience to say at least.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, man, everybody in the audience, if you haven't ever heard of Nord Lux, please check out his Odyssey channel. He's done quite a few good interviews. You have interviewed Mr. Mason, I believe, in the past. I enjoyed listening to that one. A lot of good stuff, and I've really enjoyed having you on. Do you have a? Is there a link you got to your Telegram channel as well? Because I tried to look for it earlier and I couldn't find it,
my
unfortunately.
my telegram channel, my telegram okay, what happened after the start of the war in Ukraine? I had much higher, let's say, much bigger Telegram channel, but my admin was an extremely spurgy boor Putinist. And what he did was that he started to spam all these quite bullshit things about biolabs and about some kind of grand conspiracy of I don't know who and things like that. So I said, what the fuck you doing, man? I mean, this is bullshit. And he tried to kick me out from my own group. So I
Wow.
kicked him. Yeah, I kicked him from the group and I closed the group. So basically, this is what I did. So my Telegram group is relatively small. You can contact me through Telegram out of the group or through Odyssey. This is the way to contact me. And yeah, that's it. I mean,
Oh,
I'm for now I'm not very active on Odyssey, but maybe I can, if you're recording, I can re-upload the stream eventually.
yeah. I could. I've got this stream. I'll leave this stream up on YouTube, of course. I'll have to, for some reason, whenever I stream on YouTube, I have to go back if I want to upload it to Odyssey. Now, I've got my videos that I make, they're synced to my Odyssey channel. As soon as I'll upload a video to YouTube, it's right over there. So what I'll do is I will download this. I'll have this saved and I will repost it on Odyssey, of course, for you. Absolutely.
Ah, this is Pat. What are you doing, Pat? What is going on?
Yeah, there's Pat. Pat
Uh,
stopped in.
so who is clipping your streams? What is going on?
Oh, this was some drama from a little while back, I believe.
Ah,
Some drama
oh
involving a
my,
few different people.
oh my God! So much fake drama. Oh my fucking God.
Yeah, I've been lucky, man. I've been lucky. I've managed to steer clear of a lot of this conflict for the most part. But I mean, you know, it's probably going to happen sooner or later, and just whenever it does, it does.
Oh,
But do you got any parting thoughts, Nordlux? Any last words you want to say before we close it out? I
I think
apologize again for being late today.
no,
I
no problem,
apologize for that.
no problem, bro. If you want, you can be my guest on my something like I never made a stream until maybe I must do some streams, but for until recently I didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So well, um, I would say that if you're younger, do you have time? Now is the time to build up and gather resources and organize on a small level at least. And if you are older like me, I mean, it's time to rebuild and give a little bit of wisdom and knowledge to the
Younger
larger,
generation.
to the younger generation, because what I found out is that a lot of the terms and a lot of the narratives are extremely outdated, like extremely outdated. A lot of these people are cycling quotes from people that lived and worked in 19th century or even before that, and it's extremely tiresome. They're forming opinions based on things that are outdated. And when they call us neo-Nazis, well, let's be neo something, like neo-nationalist or neo something, because it's like we must form. I mean, we are living in a time that is really like a crossroad of history right now.
Yeah.
The old order is dying. The new orders, they're fighting two, three different visions of the future world that are unacceptable. And we don't have any positions, any platform, any ideas that are out of these cycling in conservatism and things like that. Some guys are posting René Guénon, the Mason, and this is like some kind of shrine, an idol of conservatism. René Guénon, this
Yeah.
opium addict Mason. This is like conservatism. And by the way, René Guénon, there was some influence to Dugin too, but it's a whole another story. But anyway, so we must form some kind of new ideas based on what we like in our ancient history, because to preserve means to develop.
Yes. Yes. Man, it's been great to have you on. I want to say thank you. I apologize again that I was like 20 minutes late. But I've really enjoyed talking to you again, Nord Lux. We'll have to do this again here soon, for sure.
Thank you and hail victory.
Hell victory. And everyone in the audience, I want to thank y'all for stopping by, and hell victory. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye bye.